So excited. It's Wednesday afternoon, and we are coming to you with the question of how well do you know you? And we have Coach Gordon McFarlane with us. I call him Coach Gord. What, Coach Gord, welcome.
Welcome. Well, great to be here, Beth. Thanks for inviting me.
So I'm so fascinated with the topic of human behavior because we all know that we have human behavior, but we all wish we could get a better handle on our own behavior, as in, why do I do what I do? Why do I do what I don't want to do? So let's kind of start with that because we all know ourselves pretty well, or do we? I guess is the great question.
Well, that is a really good question. I don't think people know themselves as well as they'd like to, and that's why we have a lot of interest in our program. Work with thousands and thousands of athletes and thousands of employees throughout North America, around the world, in fact. My first book was launched in 2001, Become a Person of Influence, which touched on how to become a person of influence, knowing yourself, self-awareness, knowing people around you, how to build a good organization. It really started with knowing you. Who are you? What do you bring to the table? We talk about just your skill set, what you bring to the table. Like people, when you go for a job interview, they'll say, well, hey, why should we hire you? What's your skill set, right? And so we always talk about, well, you got to really know and understand who you are so you can communicate what you bring, what I call your value proposition. What do you bring to the table, right? In any conversation, if you and I are starting a relationship, those are some of the key questions we want to ask. So, tell me about yourself, Beth, right? Do you know how to adequately describe yourself in the truest sense of the word? So really it comes down to personality and character. Those are I get that question all the time, Beth. What's the difference between personality and character? Or this, I married this guy, or I'm dating this person, or I've been partners with this person, and it seems like their personality has changed. Have you ever had that question? Can a person's personality change? Here's the quick answer. No. Personality is DNA based, right? You're born with your personality. You're going to die with that personality. What people are experiencing is the character of an individual, and character is formed by their life nurture through their parents, their teachers, their coaches, their peer influences, and that creates something called attitude and behavior. What you don't like in people is usually their attitude and their behavior, but your personality is static. It's going to be developed and grown and adjusted throughout your life based on life experiences. But I'm a very strong, driven, outgoing personality. Guess what? I'm 65, and I was that way when I was a kid. I'm still that way as an adult, and heading into my retirement years. I'm still go, go, go. I work nights. I work during the day. I go, go, go. That's just part of my DNA. What's changed in my life is my ability to adapt to different people, situations. We call that nurture. So there's nature and there's nurture. Nature is who you are, personality. Character is what you do with who you are. So we have a lot of really cool approaches that we have with people where we start with personality. We start with a personality profile. We help them to understand who they are from a DNA perspective, and then how to adapt to themselves, people around them, and to the organizations and environments that they're in. So it's a bit of a process, but once they get it, I think people are pretty enthused about what they're finding out within their value proposition. So great question.
So let's clarify something, because I asked you this the other day, and so your personality is formed between the ages of 0 and 7. That's correct, right?
Well, like I said before, your character is who you are. Your character gets formed, right? Your character gets formed in the formative years. We call the formative years the ages 1 to 7. You learn from mom and dad, your early kindergarten teachers, how to behave, yes, no, thank you, please, all the things, all those morals and ethics and guidelines that you need to live through life. The formative years is what we talk about, how young people learn how to behave socially, interactively within a family structure, outside in a school structure, in a playground structure. How do you interact? That's your character. Your personality. Again, you'll see some kids that are very shy. You'll see some kids that are really outgoing. They'll go up and they'll meet their best friend in the next 2 minutes at a park, right? Yeah. They've never met them before. Well, that's an outgoing personality. So you're really classified into, when you do a DISC model, we use the DISC model, you and I, we use the DISC model of human behavior. Very simple, very easy to understand. But the cool thing about the DISC model that we use is memory recall. It allows people to really, really remember who they are, not to discount or take away from any of the other personality profiling instruments like Myers-Briggs and colors and enneagrams. It's just that they're very difficult to remember, and they're not necessarily life applicable across the board. The DISC model that I learned from Dr. Robert Rome in Personality Insights, and I've been with him, I'm one of his master trainers, been with him for over 20 years. We find that the memory recall factor for personalities is really, really powerful using his DISC model. Again, there's outgoing and reserved personalities. There's task and people. We are usually either outgoing or reserved, and then a portion of a high percentage of task and people, or low percentage of people, or the vice versa, high percentage of people, low percentage of tasks. So once you know all that, those first 7 years is how your parents get to know who you are. So we do families, like we do, say, mom and dad say, who's my little Beth? Who's Beth? And so we do Beth's personality profile. We start at age 5. We can start knowing the personalities at age 5, and then you have a really good handle on the attitude and behavior of that child. So you know how to create the climate. It's very important to create the climate. Dr. Rome has taught me CC, create the climate, and EE. It's called engineer the environment, or establish the environment so that people feel comfortable. The key thing of performance, the key thing of behavior is to allow people to feel comfortable in their current environment and create a climate where they're going to perform to their strength and their value proposition. That's a lot of information I just gave you. So it's a long answer to a short question.
Well, but it's a good answer. But so if your personality is really your the DNA of who you are, and I'm very into the idea of identity, because I think people are so confused today with what culture says they should be, could be, maybe, all that. I think all these things can create people to become confused by culture. But what you're saying is we are who we are, but from a faith perspective, and I have a lot of faith people that follow this page, that comes in when you begin to make decisions. It doesn't necessarily change your personality, but it changes your behavior. It becomes your disciplinary choices. What do you say about that part of who we become?
Oh, you're 100% right, Beth. And I think, I love the talk about fingerprints. You have a fingerprint on your logo, the one that we worked on together. And I think your identity piece is very, very powerful. And I talk about personalities when we understand, fingerprints, and when we talk about personalities, because if you look at your thumbprint on your left and right hand, both of those thumbprints are different. They're totally different. Right? Your fingerprints are you're a unique individual. As unique as your fingerprints are, so is your personality. You can have other people that have a similar personality to you, CS, DI, SC, IS, whatever, but it's not quite the same, because there's varying degrees of percentage of, like, I'm 100% D, 100% I. I can meet another DI type personality, and they could be 90% D and 80% I. We're similar, but we're not quite the same because of the degree of personality strength that we have. And that's ascertained by the assessment that you do, the 24-question assessment. So once we know the DNA and we understand, okay, each person's personality is unique as their fingerprints, right? Now we can start to work on, again, working a generalized characterization, or what we say, a generalized environment where people will feel celebrated. You don't want to put an outgoing person in a very reserved, quiet, very stoic type situation. It's gonna drive them crazy. And vice versa. You don't want to put someone who's more reserved into a very outgoing, in your face, like a high energy situation. It's not an area of level of comfort. So we also like to talk about, you and I, we've had this conversation about understanding basic needs. Personality is just a tool. The personality profile is really a tool to help us understand, okay, who is Beth? Who is Coach Gord? Right now, what we want to know is, what are the basic needs of, if Beth is a CS or a DI, what are the combined basic needs? That's probably the most important key factor in understanding how to establish the right environment and how to create the right climate, is if you understand the basic need of the individual. I call it feeding the beast. If you feed the beast won't eat you, right? So you want to create an environment where people feel celebrated and not tolerated. So imagine a classroom, Beth, where you knew the unique personality of each student. You could tailor your classroom teaching to understand what kind of learning style and what basic need that personality or those different personalities have.
And I want you to clarify what the DISC is for anyone who may not have had that awareness of the DISC program.
Okay, great. Well, I'll use a little tool here. We'll use the fun book that Dr. Room provides for us. So I'll give you a little bit of an understanding here. So this is the DISC model as we see it, right? So there's the DISC model, right? So we talk about the D being dominant, direct, demanding, decisive, determined, doer. The I being inspiring, influencing, impressionable, interactive, impressive, and interesting. Interested in people. The S personality being supportive, stable, steady, sweet, status quo, and shy. The C being cautious, calculating, competent, conscientious, contemplative, and careful. So you see the circle right here. You'll see outgoing are the D's and the I's. The C's and the S's are reserve. I's and S's are people, and the D's and C's are task, right? So you can have 80% of people are typically two traits of what we call above a midline reading. So I'm a DI. I believe you're a CS, right? A CS. No, you're an ID. That's right. I was talking to someone the other day. It was a CS, but you're an ID. So we're similar, but we're not the same. You're more outgoing, effervescent, high energy, where I'm more task oriented. You're more people oriented, but we're both outgoing personalities. So once you understand that distinction, we're going to be really good with people, like in a people environment. We're not going to be so good if you put us in a room with no windows and nothing to do. It's going to drive us crazy. That's just not something that we're really good at, right? Now, it's not to say that we can't be, right? We can learn to adapt our character and our personality to play that role, but we're very limited in roles that are not aligned with our basic needs, with our personality.
Okay, so question, as a human behaviorist, what do you say if you had someone and they were raised in a traumatic environment, they had lots of opposition, they weren't affirmed, because there's a lot of people that really get hung up on that early childhood. And what do you say to that person as far as the hope of what they can do to be able to take that shaped them, but yet be able to turn that around as a strength and be able to use that? Because I think that's a big question.
That is a great question. You know, I grew up in a very dysfunctional home. Six kids in our family. We had grandparents, two grandparents, and my mom and dad were living 10 people in a 1,200 square foot home. My dad was a struggling alcoholic, blue collar worker, hard worker, very hard worker, but basically found a way to basically drown his sorrows in alcohol and cigarettes. And so I didn't have it was a very dysfunctional home. So we all grow up in some form of dysfunction. Proverbs 22:6 says, raise a child in the way they should go, so that when they're old, they will not depart from it. That's why we talk about the formative years being so important. The foundational growing of ethics, morals, standards, character, attitude, behavior are very, very vital and important to establish that in the first 7 years of life. Once you have that, the chances are very, very high. They tend to be high for a person to come back to those morals, values, ethics, characters, attitudes, and behaviors, because it's what they know. It's seated in their character. So again, I think what really has to happen, if you've come from a troubled past where you've had a tough childhood, tough as a teenager, you've gotten into some trouble. I always work with athletes. I work a lot with athletes, but I also work with a lot of corporate entities where people pull me aside and they say, hey, coach, can I have some one-on-one time? And I always give them that one-on-one time. And it comes back to this when I'm talking to them. Okay, let's not worry about what's happened to you. Let's focus more on who you are.
Yeah.
What do you bring to the table? What are your values? Where are you at right now? And really what it comes down to is understanding their personality, what they bring to the table, and start building on that. So you build a structure, an outline, or what we call a skeleton, right? And we start adding meat to the bones. Here's what you bring to the table. So I do what's called an identity statement, and I also do what's called a performance power statement. Those two things will allow a person to take their personality profile and go through an introspective study of that profile and understand what are the words that best describe them, what's the best environment for them, what words motivate them, what words and actions demotivate them, and try to put themselves into a place where they feel celebrated more often than they feel tolerated. When that happens, let's face it, Beth, when you feel good about who you are, a lot of what you do is better.
Yeah.
So doesn't it make sense that if I put Beth into a great environment where you feel celebrated and not tolerated, you're going to respond to that stimuli? Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So I want to put you in that environment where you feel celebrated. And so that comes down to me as your coach, as your parent, as your friend, as your counselor, whatever, as your consultant, to say, well, Beth, let's figure out who you are, what are your basic needs, and let's feed those needs. Let's put you in an environment where you feel celebrated. When you start to feel celebrated, things start to change. Your self-esteem grows, your confidence grows, your faith, your belief, it all grows. I have something called a self-esteem ladder, right? And it starts with value. What value do you bring to the table? What do you own? And they say, well, I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't really have very many skills. Let's look at your profile. The first page of any profile, and here's an example of one. I'll show you mine. So the personality profile is going to give you on the very first page, the words that best describe you. Right? So you're going to get a whole slew of words, 14, 15, 16 words that best describe you. Then we're going to talk about what are your key strengths, right? What are your key strengths? The next page on this 6-page profile is what are your keys to excellence? Oh, there's so many good things in this profile that you can get. You provide the same service to folks as you start coaching them. Then who are you as a team member? All kinds of different things. What's your main motivation? Your individual talents and gifts, your value as a team member, your ideal environment. Don't you want to know that? What's the key to motivate you? What are the keys to manage your behavior and attitude? How can you best act under pressure, and how others may misunderstand and misread you? Once you have all this information, and then we say, okay, well, who are you naturally? Who are you naturally? And who are you in your environment? So we get to see you naturally, and we get to see you in a current environment. So once we know these factors, now we can begin to communicate you in a good way. And people get skewed in their relationships because basic needs are not being met. If I'm in a relationship with you, Beth, and you're feeling, well, Coach, we're just at odds all the time, we're not talking the same language, it's because I've stopped thinking about basic needs for you, and you've stopped talking about basic needs for me. Listen, a marriage is not about basically feeding yourself. It's called die to self. An effective marriage, an effective partnership, anything that's going to be long lasting is going to be a die to self type of attitude. You first, me last, right? And that's a very, very effective way to run relationships. If I'm more concerned about what does Beth need, and you're more concerned about what does Coach Gord need, we're going to have a great relationship, because now it's not all about me. I want to feed your beast, and you want to feed my beast. The basic needs are being met. When you create that climate, when you establish that environment, Beth, great things can happen.
Well, and I think it's important too to understand the difference in the personalities. I'm a high ID. My husband is all D. He has no I. So when we go somewhere together, I'm like, look, I want to like these people, and you're going to have to be nice to them, and he's like, okay. It's the back and forth of be nice to them, acknowledge that they're, because he's so key that he, you can have fun with the differences in the personalities, but you have to understand that. So I want to ask the question about, we're in a time where so many people, anxiety's all the way up here. People feel alone and isolated. Is that because they don't necessarily understand who they are, and therefore they're fighting with who they are? Does that question make sense?
Wow, another really good question. There's a lot to that question, Beth. I think the reality is this, is that let's use my profile, for instance. Okay. So if you look at the graph, you can see green and red. Okay. Very high. Blue on this one over here, blue is above what we call the midline. You can see the midline right there. And then you'll notice that the C, right? It's very low. It's 3%.
You got no C. You got no C there. You're missing
exactly. C. So when I go into a very reserved, very detail-oriented environment, that's not my thing. That's not. I'm not comfortable in that environment. In fact, I'm not happy. I'm grumpy Gord. Okay,
that is not your EE.
No. But does it make sense to you that school, a place like school, is a very high C environment? But they don't cater to personalities that are this, right? That are these. Now, in my environment, look at my environment, right? Look at my environment, right? It's very high D, virtually nothing else. So I just want to get in there, get the job done, get out. Okay, give me the test. I'll do the test. I'll get out. Is that conducive to a good environment when the teacher is a high C?
No.
No,
not at
that's
all.
why it took me
You're gonna drive the
7
teacher
years.
crazy, and the teacher's going to drive you crazy.
It took me 7 years to get
Great.
through high school.
Yeah.
Why? Because I wasn't my personality was not conducive to a CSSC type environment for teaching, right?
Yeah.
Where you need to sit down, take notes, gather information, do your test, get your marks, and yeah, I got my certificate. Now, it's not that I'm not smart, it's just that I'm easily distracted. There are dysfunctions for each of the 4 personalities, which I like to share with people because they don't know. There's ADD for the D, because the D is go, go, go. They want to keep going. They want to keep it. Right? They have ADD because if it doesn't interest them, they're off to doing something else.
Right.
The I personality is ADHD, attention deficit hyper disorder. They can't sit still. So
That's
don't keep
me.
my attention. Keep my attention. So when I was working with sports, I was telling coaches who are very C and D, I said, guys, gals, you want to create a training that's only no more than 15 minutes. Like when you're doing a skill, 10 to 15 minutes max. Because if you have high eyes on your team, they're going to be shiny object syndrome, right? They're going to be distracted, squirrel, right? And so that you have to be aware of those 2 dysfunctions. Now, for the S personality, the behavioral dysfunction is fear. S's are afraid of what might happen or afraid of what will happen, right? What about their favorite question is what if? What if this happens? And what if that person's not there? What do I do with this? So they want to know what if, right? 95% of the what ifs never really happen. So you're being fearful for no reason. The C-type personality, to some degree or not, they have OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder. Everything has to be in its place. Everything has to be in order. It has to be right. It has to be done right. It has to be said right. Otherwise, they're at a level of discomfort. They'll look to rearrange things. So again, those are strong tendencies. It's not 100%. Again, there's strong tendencies that people have those dysfunctions. So when you're in a relationship, I say I'm a DI. My main objective as a DI is to learn how to visit the 2 traits that are lower in my trait continuum. So the S and the C are lower. So I work on how to understand those ones better so I can be a better DI. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
I want to visit the traits that are lower in my trait continuum so I can learn about who are you. So the 3 steps are this: self-awareness, who am I? Aware of other people, who are you? And what's going to make us a better combination, a better us, a better couple, a better team, a better management team, a better parenting team, whatever we can do to understand ourselves better so we can create the climate and establish the environment or engineer the environment. So again, people feel celebrated. That makes sense?
It does. And I have a phrase I use in coaching. It's called better be, better we. Because typically if there's a conflict in a relationship, we want to put it on the other person and we want to blame them. But the truth is, it's not their fault. They're just different, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so
again, understanding other people's basic needs. If I understand your basic need, you like recognition.
Yeah.
You like being popular. You like interaction. If I put you in a room with no windows and just sit there and just, think about things, ponder, meditate, you can do that for a little while because you've matured and you've learned how to do that. But that's not an ideal environment for you or me, right? We want to be with people. We want to interact. We want to engage with people. We want to get things done. We want to get results. We want to achieve. We want to accomplish, right? That's not to say the S's and the C's are not like that. They're just not driven by that. That's not their basic need. So if I understand the basic needs of you and you understand the basic needs of me, we can communicate better. That makes complete sense.
Yeah. So when you're coaching people and you've coached people for a long time, what are the pitfalls that you find people find themselves tripping over in their personal and professional lives? Because I think people spend a lot of time going, man, I wonder what went wrong. I don't know what happened there. I don't know how that didn't work out like I thought to. What are the pitfalls that we need to be more aware of so that we can be more proactive with?
Wow, you got some doozy questions here. These are good questions. There's a lot to that one. Again, I think a lot of the time, Beth, people carry baggage, right?
Yeah.
They carry a lot of the experiences in life with them, and they hold themselves in account. They hold themselves in contempt, right? And they say, well, this happened the last time, or I'm not good with this. I'm not good with people. I'm not a good communicator. I have struggles with this. the longer you stay attached, that trailer or that baggage stays attached to your personality, your character, the tougher time you're going to have moving on. So it's really a journey of discovery. It's a journey of discovery, and it's a journey of acceptance, understanding who you are and realizing that you're not perfect. Right? You have all four personalities in you. All right. I have D, I, S, and C, as you saw, some to a greater, some to a lesser degree. Right? I have way more D and I. You have way more I and D than you do S and C. That's just, it's the same with everyone. We have all four in us, right? Some to a greater, some to a lesser degree. So when we realize and understand that we do have areas that we fall short in, just don't hold yourself in contempt. Have a growth mindset. Carol Dweck, one of the top 20 books that I read here, Carol Dweck has a book called Mindset, right? Mindset talks about the two mindsets that people own. It's a book on psychology, a great little book if you want to understand a growth mindset and fixed mindset. The two personalities that tend to, not all the time, the two personalities that tend to have a growth mindset are D's and I's, because they're just adventurous. They'll take whatever and they'll say, well, if that works, we'll do it. If it doesn't work, we're not going to do it. The C's and the S's have a tendency, not always, but they have a tendency to be more fixed mindset, because they want things to be proven. They want the details. They want to make sure that they're going down the right path. So what we try to say is, now the cool thing about mindset is it can be adjusted. That comes from the art of visitation. My goal is to visit more the C and the S so I can be more successful in education environments, in school environments, all the places that I need to be. C's and S's need to visit to be more outgoing, to interact with people, go to the party, go to an organizational meeting and stick your hand out and say hello and talk to people. I don't know what to say. So I give them this little acronym. Use the acronym FORM, FORM. Talk about family, talk about occupation, talk about recreation. Hey, what do you do for fun? What's your occupation? What do you do for a living? Where do you work? And M is message, motivation, or money. I break that down into 3 different ways, because M can go one of 2 ways. Hey, I asked a question. Hey, Beth, if you won $1 million, how would that change your life? And then you can tell a lot about a person when you bring money into the question, right? What's your life motivation? The letter M. What motivates you? What gets you up in the morning? What really motivates you? What inspires you to do what you do? And what's your message? What's your life message? If someone was starting out in life, what message would you give them? That can tell me a lot about what a person's background is, what their future desires are, and what their value proposition is. So the acronym FORM is really good for people who are not so good at reaching out, at interacting, at going with different people and talking to them. Use the acronym FORM just to go, okay, remember FORM: family, occupation, recreation, and message, money, or motivation, right? So that's a good little tip for those C's and S's who are a little more shy, a little more reserved, that are not people that want to go out. And you and I have no problem. We can talk to inanimate objects, right?
Yeah.
It's no problem. So
But
that's
true.
that encouragement.
And it also feeds the beast of preparation. If you're a person who needs to walk into a room and have prepared, then it gives a vehicle, a specific thing to say, okay, here's your preparation, go in with the form, and then you've got a plan. And then that alleviates anxiety. So is that a key of eliminating anxiety? Because again, people are really struggling with that. I think the key, I guess, to that is understanding you're a little bit of all 4, and then strengthening those areas where, I'm not great at S and C, but I have tripped over myself enough times to know I better be cautious about this decision.
Yeah.
I have learned the hard way. If I leap into it, it's not going to go well. So as far as dealing with that personal anxiety, and being able to fully go out every day and engage. I know there's no secret sauce for that, but I think what you said is quit holding yourself hostage to all the things you think, that you got to do and be, right?
Yeah. Wow. What a great question again, Beth. And this is a reality. I have 4 daughters. They're all grown now. I have grandkids. My wife and I have been together for 40 years next month. And she's a specialist. She's a teacher. She's at school today, or her first staff meeting of the year for a Christian private school here in Ontario. Canada. And, we talk about all the time about, mental health. I believe that I'm a mental health practitioner in that creating climates and establishing environments is all about self-awareness.
Yes.
I think a lot of young people don't have a strong self-awareness, a strong self-esteem, understanding of who they are. And I'm going to go back to it, what they bring to the table. Here's why, because they're comparing themselves to other people. They're comparing what they don't have and what other people do have. Why are they so successful? Why do they do this? Why do they do that? Why are they so popular? Popularity is a very big thing when it comes to young people, right? They want to be part of something. Well, I try to build up self-esteem in people. Let's go back to the ladder. What's their value, right? What's their faith? What's their belief? How much level of confidence? It's really about confidence. Confidence is really 85% belief in yourself. If you don't believe in yourself, you can't have confidence. If you don't have confidence, you can't have self-esteem. So it starts with understanding. I think parents would be very, very wise to get a hold of you or myself and talk about getting your young people, your kids starting at age 5, into a personality profile. So you as parents can begin to understand who they are as little people, right? Who you are as a personality. And then you can start, we have something called an interaction guide, the personality of your child, the personality of yourself, and how do you, the strengths, strategies, and struggles that you have in your two conflicting or two similar personalities, right?
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of young people that are searching for identity, and I go back to my identity statement and personal power statement. For instance, if I'm working with an athlete, there are 3 different awareness campaigns that I want them to be on. Who are they as a person? Who are they as an athlete? And who are they as a teammate? Because those can be 3 different things, right? So there's a triple identity, and it's the same for if you're part of a family. Well, who am I as a person? Who am I as a family member? Sorry, as a boy or a girl, right? And then who am I as a family member? We're contributors to an organization, to a group, to a friendship circle. And so really it starts with self-awareness, your comfort level, your confidence, but it comes right down to being self-aware. A lot of kids are not self-aware. And so mental health comes from strength in knowing who you are, why you were created, your purpose, right? And what you're calling. Most teenagers are trying to go into careers that's not suited for their personality, not suited for their upbringing. You want to really know your personality. When you know your personality, right? If you're a D and an I or an S and a C, you want to know to what degree, because then you're going to know which vocation is actually well suited to your personality and character. You do not want to get into a career that's really against your personality and your character. It's going to be a long, futile fight. It's not going to be an enjoyable journey. You'll never work a day in your life if you love what you do.
That's true. That's
right.
Well, this is so good. We could talk all day, but we won't. I'll cap it there. But this is it's also fascinating, but it's also doable. And I think that I think we all have to do the work to make our life work for us, and understanding the personalities and developing that character is such an important part of that. And we're going to put in the comments your books and your coaching and how people can link to you, because you are a master trainer. You've been doing this for a long time. You have books, you have resources, and we want to make that available to others, because I know I've learned from you in the short time that I've known you, and I'm grateful to get to be able to continue to do that. So thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you. And a new book that I'll be coming out with that'll be very helpful, I think, for people is Communicate to Connect, The Power of Words, Influential Communication for Coaches, Leaders, and Parents. That's going to be, and basically it's going to be a very short book. It's not going to be a long book. It's going to be 9 chapters. Communicate to Connect Introduction, the first rule of communication, skill with people, how to cultivate connections, the 4 C's of communication, right? Don't criticize, condemn, complain, or compare. Go where you're valued, chapter 5. Chapter 6 is develop a performance mindset. And then number 7, why mindset matters, why your mindset's important. Chapter 8 will be more Communicate to Connect, and I'll be closing the circle. And then I'll finish in chapter 9 with make everybody feel like a somebody. That'll be 9 chapters. It'll be about a 40, 50-page book, small book. It'll be coming out on Amazon here in the next short while. So be on the lookout for that. My personal website is performancemindsetcoach.com. And well, there's a mistake in there. It actually should be mindset. So let's see here if I can fix that. So it's mindset. I put it in there wrong. I'll put it in there again properly.
Are you putting that in the Facebook link?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Perfect. Good. We've got some good comments here. So yeah, people are liking the topic.
Oh, cool. There it is, performancemindsetcoach.com. That is my main website, but I also have my Facebook page. You can certainly follow me on Facebook. I'm on Instagram under Performance Mindset Coach. Facebook is Gordon McFarlane. And then if people are coaches or teachers, I invite them to my private Performance Mindset Coach Facebook group. I've got about 900 members there that get daily inspiration and daily information from me on my
just
performance.
Put any of those that people are invited to, just put those in the links, because then people won't have to go looking. They can just click.
Yeah, if they go to my website, performancemindsetcoach.com, at the very bottom of the page, all my links are there. LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. You just have to click on the little logo, the Facebook logo, Instagram logo, and LinkedIn logo. All of my contact information is there. I do keynote addresses, keynote speaking. I do one-on-ones. In fact, I'm meeting with a gentleman tonight who's I've been coaching for a number of years. He's having some challenges with his partner, and so he wants to talk about that. So my wife and I will get together with them and provide some insights on how they can make their two personalities and characters work in a long-term setting. So we do that on a regular basis with people. We're here to help, right? We're here to help people like you are. You're providing people, how to have that life on purpose, right? I think if people have purpose and direction, and they know who they are, what their value proposition is. Value proposition is not just for companies.
Right.
Everybody has to have a value proposition for their life. What do they bring to the table? It's what's important, right? In a relationship, if we're going to start dating someone, isn't it good to know what that person brings to the table? Why should I date you? Why should I hire you to my company? Why do we build championship teams, right? How do we build championship teams? Well, we've got to have the right ingredients. When you're making a cake, how do you make a cake rise? You need all the right ingredients. It's the same for a family. It's the same for a business. It's the same for an organizational team. And Beth, it's been great to be with you today. It was wonderful.
You too. Thank you so much for joining me. We'll definitely loop back around and do this again when your book comes out. Would love to come back and talk about something.
Yeah, the most recent book that's going to come out is one more for athletes and first responders. Is Increase Your Grit and Mental Toughness. This is the first copy. This is actually
like an LSU Tiger, just so you know.
Yeah, this is the hard copy. So it's a nice little book that's coming out on Amazon here. It was I talked to my publisher yesterday. They're coming up with that, but that'll be released here in the next 2-3 days. So it'll be available in the market. Do me a favor, go on, buy the book, and write me a review. Tell me how much you like it.
I will definitely do that, because an author, I know how important that is. So I will definitely do that.
Thank you.
Well, great. Thank you so much. Appreciate the comments, everybody, for coming in. And we'll definitely loop back around. And till next time, Coach Gord.
Thanks, Beth.